Welcome to New in Duke Blue, where we introduce new Duke leaders to staff and faculty to help others get to know the people who are helping set the course for the university's second century. My name is Antwan Lofton, and I'm excited to welcome Mohamed Noor, Executive Vice Provost, as my guest today. Mohamed was named to his role in June 2024, but he has been a professor of biology at Duke since 2005. He has also served in various leadership roles at Duke, including Interim Dean of Trinity College, Dean of Natural Sciences, and Chair of the Department of Biology. In his role, Mohamed is responsible for contributing to the strategic vision of Duke's academic mission. So we welcome Mohamed with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Mohamed, tell us a little bit about yourself outside of the academic appointments. Tell us, who is Mohamed Noor?
Mohamed Noor. Mohamed Noor is somebody who grew up loving biology. So I am a biology professor. My first love is in biology. As a little kid, I used to catch wild crickets and play with them, or June bugs and do experiments on them and things like that. In fact, actually, I recently found my 7th grade yearbook, and somebody wrote in there, "Someday you'll be a biologist." Like, oh, wow. Yeah, spot on. I'm also a big science fiction nerd. You probably know this as well. I love, all sorts of series. We were talking about Severance right before we started recording. I'm a big fan of Star Trek and the franchise. And in fact, so much so that in the last couple of years, I've actually gotten involved in the franchise as a scientific consultant. So if, when it pops up saying next episode, if you cancel that out and wait to the very end after the credits, sometimes you'll see my name in some of those episodes.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but I love merging the two too. I mean, I love actually teaching people biology concepts by leveraging their interest in science fiction. So I do this both in the classroom here at Duke, as well as in various forums outside of Duke.
Wonderful. So give me a little more. When we look at that lofty title, people may say, well, what exactly does that role do? The administrative side of it. You explained the background in biology. So now tell us about the administrative side of the role.
So I guess let's start with the provost part. So the provost is Alec Gallimore, who you reviewed as part of this series very well. Great job. So the provost is the top academic officer at the university. All academics, flow through the provost of the provost office. The way, in terms of my title is Executive Vice Provost. The way that Alec and I have split the job, and I love this split, is Alec is very much the vision, the long-term strategy, things like that. So for example, deciding that we are going to look at academic freedom and what it means in this moment, or saying we're going to have an AI initiative, or the Provost initiative on the Middle East. All these are things that come from Alec, so there's this long-term vision. The Provost office also has a lot of just operational things. And these are the things that I like to do and have been delegated to me. So just as some examples, we have an academic programs committee. So when nursing recently decided to launch a new master's in nursing program, that goes to the committee that I run, and I help oversee that. Faculty retirement agreements, I look over those to ensure consistency across schools. Various sort of just operational things that happen day to day in the context of the execution of our academic mission. Those are the things that mostly flow through me. I love it. It's really fun.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you started off by telling us about your childhood, and you kind of knew biology was your love.
Yeah.
Then you kind of fast forwarded a little bit to telling us about what you're doing today. That in-between window, chat with us a little bit about that. I know for a fact that development is very important to you. So if you could kind of walk us through your career progression and kind of think through for the individuals that are listening and watching today that may be at the beginning of their career, kind of take us down through the years as it relates to your career ladder.
Sure. So for me, I always knew I loved biology. I went to college loving biology. I actually transitioned a little while there and decided I wanted to go into psychology, which I still also enjoy, but I came back to biology in college. I went to graduate school in a program in ecology and evolution. I was very excited about evolution. That came because I took a class as an undergraduate, and this ties to some of what I love here about Duke. I took a class as an undergraduate on evolutionary genetics, and it was just inspirational. I would sit in the front row, and I was like, this is the best thing ever. I used to record it. Back when we used tape recorders, I used to record it, and I'd go to the gym, and I'd listen to it again. I want to hear it again. So I was very, very passionate about that. So that got me to go into graduate school in this broader field. Academia is funny in the context of folks who go the more faculty route, that we're trained in certain areas and we're not trained in other areas. And that's probably going to come to something you'll talk about later, that in graduate school, I was very much trained in the context of how to conduct research.
Okay.
Very heavily on that, and I had a dissertation project that was a lot of fun. It panned out in a good way. it's interesting when you transition to being a faculty member, it's like, now go teach a class. I had never taught a class before. I had never received any training in teaching a class. And it was interesting that the university I was at, I didn't start at Duke, I started someplace else, but the university I was at just said, go teach a class. Nobody even checked on me.
Wow.
You just went in and did it. So it's interesting that so much for faculty kinds of positions are not things you're trained in. You also then run a research lab. And it was interesting in that sense, I never had any sort of personnel management training or HR training or anything, which you obviously know very well. So in terms of advice I would give for somebody in this context, this is never advice I actually received, but the advice I would give to somebody is find the gaps in terms of what it is you're pursuing and get some more experience in those things. So for example, if you know you want to have a position that's going to have a lot of teaching, get some training and get some experience in teaching. If you know you're going to have to be mentoring a lot of people, get some experience mentoring. Build those things. So I kind of fell into each of those things in my personal journey. You know, I just moved forward along the typical path and hoped for the best and learned from mistakes I made along the way and just from talking to colleagues informally. But it would be great to have more of a formal construct around those things. But eventually I got into, as you mentioned, into some of the leadership roles that you talked about. Mostly people just, I think, I got along with people pretty well, and they said, hey, you know, given that you seem to get along with people well, would you be interested in being associate chair of the biology department? So I did that for 7 years. And because I had done that, it was easy to transition to being department chair because I was exposed to a lot of it and I built the relationships needed. And that's a big thing too, just in general, this building of relationships is vital for all of these sorts of roles. Anything that's academic, I mentioned all the operational things I'm doing. I mean, it's vital to have these relationships where you can work with people collaboratively. Because you asked about what I do, and I mentioned these particular things like running this committee and things like that, but it's never just me. Right. It's always including you. It's always working with an amazing team of people to get these things done.
So you did a great job talking about career ladders and your path going between. What was the best advice someone gave you during your career?
Oh, I think this would be advice from our former Dean of Arts and Sciences, Valerie Ashby. She said, do the tough things in person. So often in a leadership role, you have to have some difficult conversations. It's easy to just hop on an email, type it all out, shoot the email out and things like that, but that never pans out well if it's a difficult thing. So the way she used to always say is pick up the phone, show up at the people's office, basically show people, again, this comes back to this whole building relationships idea, show people that you care, be there in front of them, assess their reactions, and act accordingly.
Absolutely, wonderful. So you've mentioned different organizations or different universities or academic settings that you've sat in the past. So now it's that famous question that we ask everyone.
Yeah.
Why Duke?
Why Duke? Oh, fascinating story there. So I started off at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge. That was my first faculty position. I was there for 7 years. Honestly, I was very happy there. I could have stayed there my whole career and I would have been fine. What happened was interesting that I was invited to serve on a PhD students committee here. And I came and I interacted with that PhD student. I interacted with a lot of other PhD students. I also would periodically give talks over at, say, UNC Chapel Hill. And a bunch of Duke graduate students would show up there. And honestly, it was the graduate students that drew me here. I thought,
wonderful.
Wow, these grad students are amazing. Not that we didn't have great grad students at LSU too, but just universally, the grad students here were amazing. So that really drew me to this. So I actively pursued, while I was at LSU, having a position at Duke. It wasn't just like I was applying to jobs to leave. I was happy where I was, but I was very interested in a job at Duke. So I reached out to the department, and then at one point in time, there was finally an opening in my area, and I was able to slip in under the gun there. But it was really the opportunity to work with the grad students. Since I've been here, I've seen it's not just the grad students. The faculty, the staff, everybody here, I mean, the collaborative nature everybody has, the warmth, the way everybody just is willing to come together, even in times when things are really, really challenging, even on really difficult problems, people just come together and work and like, all right, let's get it done. I love it. I feel like that should be Duke's slogan. We get it done.
We can work on that. we may find a way to include that into our slogan.
Sure.
So now, with that being said, when we start to turn the page, we have a wonderful 100 years behind us that is now laying as the foundation that we have the privilege of having leaders like you to help build the next 100 years above it. What are some things in academe that you think that we should keep at the forefront of our mind as we go into the second century of Duke?
Great question. So I'm gonna tie this back to the very beginning thing I was talking about my passions in terms of science fiction and things like that. Not about science fiction in particular, though. We are a research university. We always pride ourselves on how excellent we are as a research university, and that's great. And we should never lose sight of that. That said, there are opportunities we have to advance our missions in the context of teaching and mentoring. And I think we can actually do better there. And there's, for example, right now there's a 2030 committee on teaching excellence and mentoring excellence. And it's looking at ways to improve how we assess teaching. I mean, right now, for example, we assess teaching just using student course evaluations. There's a huge scientific literature out there which shows that student course evaluations have all sorts of intrinsic biases and things like that too. How can we supplement them? So one of the things I started right when I started in the Provost office was a peer course evaluation program, a centralized one where essentially a faculty member can call the Provost office and it's like a hotline of like, send somebody to come do an evaluation of my course. And we have people who are trained using a very informed rubric who will come, provide an evaluation, and it's used not just for giving them feedback, but actually in the context of promotions and evaluations and raises and things like that. So that's one example. I think we can do better just in general in the sense of considering these things for tenure. I think we can do better to promote our non-tenure track faculty who have more teaching-related appointments. I think these are significant areas for growth. At the same time, we can't lose sight of the fact we are a Research One university. So there are intersections where those two things come together. So, and we do this very well at Duke in the context of involving our students in research programs in various ways. But I think on the teaching and mentoring front, I think there are opportunities for improvement. I'm hoping to help with those too, and I think a lot of people are going to come with us on it.
I think they will, primarily because you're at the helm leading us. So we are definitely excited to learn more as you go through your matriculation in this role.
Thanks for all you do, too.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you. Well, Duke community, here we are again. We now know who is new in Duke Blue. So thank you, Mohamed, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.